you first got the scripts, kind of like what were some of the useful questions that were in place for you to ask her and talk to her about with this character? Because so much of the show, and your character in particular, is about the unexpected elements which lay beneath the surface with all of them.
Absolutely. And that was sort of the first question, is because I'd only read the pilot when I first got it, and the first question was, where is this going to go, and what are we doing with this character? Because if you look at episode 1 Marcus, he's very, very different to episode 10 Marcus. And I like that journey, and I'm really proud that we got to tell that story. I mean, initially I was quite reticent to play that kind of antagonist kind of character, at least in the beginning. And part of my questions, and my first few questions were, okay, what is this setting up? How are we telling the story? Why is he behaving in this awful way? And where is it going? And I'm so thrilled with where they decided to go with it, because I've read it and I go, oh man, he's mean. He's not cool. Like, and then my second thought was, I know so many guys like this. I just can count on the top of my hands, just go, okay, yeah, I get it. He's real. And then the final thing, when I kind of learnt where it was going, was just to be able to show that journey, and to be able to show that, so show young men that your behavior has repercussions. You should treat women with respect, and what happens when you don't. And the point where Marcus kind of realizes how he's been treating Ginny is really seriously affecting her, I think is an important message for young men to look at, and to sort of look at their own behavior and provide an example of what not to do.
Mm-hmm. You know, and so much of what he's going through, and part of what drives a lot of his behavior, is the fact that his closest friend in high school got really sick with cancer and passed away, and we learned that very on in the show. And did you have lots of conversations to really flesh out the idea of what was that friendship, what was that relationship, and what was it that he was really going through? Because it wasn't a journey of something that happened to him over the course of a few weeks. This is something that he was living with every day with his friend for well over a year, and is still kind of processing the grief and trauma that he's been experiencing since then.
Absolutely. And it wasn't necessarily more about, building up what that relationship was, because that's all they're wonderful circumstances to have. But what the story about is about that grief, and it's about overcoming it or not overcoming it, and how people deal with that, especially young men, because a lot of young men just get the emotion and we push it down and we try and just not feel anything, and that's normal. So I think to show that process of grief was really important, and to talk about that. We had discussions with both Deb and Sarah about has Marcus gone to therapy? Where is he at this sort of stage? And we kind of came to the conclusion, and we also worked with Mental Health America on this. We came to the conclusion that he's been through therapy. He's taken medication. He knows the rigmarole of mental health, and can become, later on in the story, an advocate for it. He's one of the, what I love about Marcus is he's one of the few people who, amongst all the masks that he's throwing up and the dishonesty and how many fronts he's putting up, he is quite often quite honest about how badly he's feeling. He's always like, yeah, I mean, this is my life. So to have that and to be honest, and for him to be an advocate for Jenny, was a really special and an honor to kind of play, because you need that messaging of, it's okay to go through these things. It's okay to feel this way. It's okay to ask for help. You can't do it alone.
And he definitely seems like someone who's much more comfortable having a really quiet, intimate one-on-one conversation than group settings. How did you think about the difference in the way that he would behave and the way that he would interact with people when he is in that group setting? Because that's kind of the moment where he feels very far outside of his comfort zone, even though on the surface he seems like someone who would really thrive in those situations. Absolutely.
I mean, that's it's just a front. Marcus has 50 different masks and he keeps everyone at arm's length. And that's harder to do when you have 15 people in a room. You can't keep them all going at the same time because you're juggling 15 different plates with 15 different people. So it builds in his anxiety, and that's a part of myself that I can connect with Marcus for sure. I am definitely more comfortable one-on-one or in smaller group settings than larger group settings, and I understand that anxiety around it, and just tried to bring that truthfulness to it. And it's because of his inability to deal with his own feelings and his own emotions, that he struggles so much.
I was interested in the communication style that you all developed as a family, particularly with the mention of the fact that the father's deaf, and I thought it was interesting that it was a mix of sign language and verbal communication that this family has, which is very realistic, and kind of how everybody landed on what that communication was going to be amongst them, and how much sign language you actually had the opportunity to learn for that.
So yeah, so Chris is deaf, and his son also helped us learn as much sign as we could. We also had an ASL interpreter on set as well, instructing us. So we all did a bunch of lessons. We were trying to figure out as much as we could. Everyone on set was starting to learn a little bit of sign, but it was just so eye-opening for me, and such an you know, shone a magnifying glass on my privilege, really, because I don't even think about that, and I don't think about how other families communicate and how other families need to communicate. And to be a part of showing that, of representing that on screen, was really quite humbling, and hopefully we did it justice. Yeah, I loved being a part of it, for that reason, because it shows just a different dynamic of families, because there are so many different dynamics, and this was just one of them.